Bonjour, Mishko Pongnan Quain Adishnakas Mungdodem. Hi everybody, it's Sandy Boucher here, Red Thunderbolt Woman of the Loon Clan. I'm a proud member of Seine River First Nation in Northern Ontario, and I'm here again this week with episode 20 of Surviving Isolation. And I'm recording this on July 31st, 2020, just for those of you who are watching it at a later date. Now, before I say anything else, I do want to wish a big heartfelt welcome to all of my listeners and viewers. To those listening on Sandy Boucher, the podcast, thank you so much. I have new offerings on the podcast, so stay tuned to that. To those of you watching this on YouTube, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe. And to those of you watching it on Shaw's Spotlight, thank you so much for welcoming me back. That sounds cute. Into your homes yet again. As always, we're going to start off with a mental health check-in. How are you doing? I can't even imagine, and I'm totally owning this, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a parent of a school-age child right now and deciding what you can do and how you feel about the children returning to school in September. I know so many people feel like they don't have a choice. I am so thankful I never had to make that choice, to believe that I had to send my child somewhere that may or may not be healthy depending on my view because I have to go to work. That scares me. I think I've mentioned before that my daughter homeschools my grandchildren, and I absolutely love that they are not being touched by that. But if you're in that situation or you're a grandparent worried about your grandchildren going back, my heart goes out to you. I can't even imagine. Most of us are just adjusting to stage 3 and what it's like being in stage 3 and how we feel about that and how safe we are. It's starting to become a routine for me to wear my masks. I definitely have them with me all the time. You get out of the car, you put your mask on. It's as simple as that, or I adjust it and put it on before I head out of the car. But how are you doing? Scale of 1 to 10. How are you doing? Do that mental health check-in. Even if you don't tell anyone else, ask yourself the question. So, statistics time. It was March 11th when the World Health Organization first declared the pandemic. As of today, July 31st, that is 142 days ago. Now, my last public event was on March 13th. I went into self-isolation on March 14th, which was 139 days ago. And Ontario first declared the state of emergency for the province on March 17th, 136 days ago. I repeat, how you doing? Now this week, because it's the end of a month again, we're doing the big reveal show, and I'm letting you know my results because I find that goal setting and then measuring those goals is a way to stay on track and even to feel in control of my life, even when the world is totally out of my control. So on March 22nd, I think a lot out of fear and frustration at that time, I sat down and I wrote a declaration, and I promised myself that I'm coming out of this. There was 4 parts. I'm coming out of this wiser, stronger, healthier, and happier. So first off, that's what I wanted to report on today. How am I doing with those goals? How are you doing with those goals? Wiser. Well, when I talk about wiser, that meant I learned more things, right? So the first thing that came to mind was books. I had set a goal for reading books. If I was going to be home during a pandemic, I could at least read all of those books I said I wanted to read, all those books I had bought and are on my bookshelves waiting for me. I figured I could finally get around to reading them. And actually the goal, because that's the goal of influencers in my industry, was to read a book a week. That didn't happen. Not even close. But I did look back today. So I've been in self-isolation for 131 days, and I have read 6 books, completed 6 books. I'm about halfway through the next one, which is 1 book every 22 days. I'm not beating myself up for that. I know that is, I'm going to have more books read in 2020 than I have in years. So I'm taking that as a win. And now I've discovered listening to the books on my iPhone while I do my walking. Oh, I'm killing it. I'm going to kill this goal. I'm going to get that 1 book a week down. If it kills me, and it's not going to kill me, I'm getting stronger while I'm doing it. I'm wiser. It's awesome. The next one was stronger. I wanted to be wiser than stronger. Now, when I think of stronger, I think of the medicine wheel. I think of emotionally, spiritually, physically, and mentally. The 4 parts of the human being, and all of the parts have to become stronger if you want to be stronger, or that's what I believe. So emotionally first, how am I doing with my emotional health, right? And I believe I'm doing really good and it's not because I haven't become emotional. I've owned my 1 or 2 days too. My number 1 on the scale or number 2 on the how am I doing scale. I'm saying I'm doing okay emotionally because I've been owning my numbers. When I have a number 2 day, I'm owning it and I'm not denying it. And I'm sharing that with my friends so I can get support. And I think that so fits into the authenticity that I live by that I absolutely love that. And I'm owning my 8, 9, and 10 days and sharing those with the world and sharing how I did it so maybe people can replicate it. So emotionally, I think I'm doing really good. So I'm going to take that one as a win too. Mentally, first off was the books, and feeding my brain. I don't tend to read fiction. It's nonfiction, whether it's autobiographies or self-help books or whatever. So definitely feeding the brain there. But this week, over the last 7 days, I guess, huge on the mental growth, my thinking. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the baby elephant syndrome. And it's pretty common. It's been around for a while. So if you think of a circus, carnival, whatever, that has the big elephants, and for a long time, people were noticing that the big, huge elephant is being restrained or standing in place and being held by a little rope tied to a little pole. And anyone looking at that rope or the pole it's attached to could easily figure out that if the elephant wanted to, he could just break free, which is kind of freaky to see in real life. But they don't. Baby elephant syndrome goes to the fact that when an elephant is a baby, they actually restrain him with a really huge big chain, because that's when the elephant's going to fight and try to break free. And eventually the baby elephant is realizing he can't break free, and he tries less and less. And as the baby elephant ages, they're actually able to reduce the size of the chain until the adult elephant isn't even trying, even though now he could totally break free. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a story of internalized oppression. That's what happens to people in oppressed groups. That's what happens to Black people. That's what happens to Indigenous people. That as youth, we fight, and our youth are fighting. They're fighting against each other. They're fighting against the world. They're fighting against themselves often. And that doesn't always end well. But over time, they just get complacent, especially if they're told that, why even bother trying? Nothing's going to change. That lateral violence, just holding our own down. until they become the adults that there's just no fight left in them anymore. Now, I know all about internalized oppression. I teach people about it. But this week, thanks to a network I now belong to, a network of international women that are not Indigenous, I think some might be, but not, most of them are not, and they're not from Canada, so they weren't born into the box and the rules and the restrictions and the oppression that I was. And by having a conversation with them, I identified chains that were still holding me back. And I talk about internalized oppression. When I realized that I just assumed that only Indigenous people, that my story would only resonate with Indigenous people, that was a chain I was living under, because that is so wrong. It's so inaccurate. And that was proved to me this week. The other thing was, because I talk about reconciliation, that only Canadians or people interested in Canada would have an interest in my work. And again, I was proven wrong. So mentally, it was such a breakthrough this week to realize these assumptions and restrictions I was operating under. I can honestly say since then, I'm now going to be a speaker. I accepted to be a speaker at a global wellness summit. And I never even would have connected with the person who asked me if I was still operating under those chains. Well, you're sitting there, maybe with nothing to do. Maybe it could take some time to look at what chains you're operating under. Spiritually, I think was hard for a lot of Indigenous people. We can't do our powwows. We can't do a lot of our gatherings. For me, before the pandemic, I had come to the realization, my mom had said it 100 times, that we are not our ceremonies. That is how we express who we are. That is how we maintain who we are. That is how we strengthen ourselves and our beings. But if we had to, we can go on without those. And our ancestors have had to. When our men and young women or any age are incarcerated, often they have to go without our ceremonies. When our peoples, our entire communities, our children went to residential school, they had to do without our ceremonies. But they survived because who we are is inside us. And even when we can't express it through ceremony, we can express it in a prayer done even just silently to the sun in the morning as it comes up. You don't need tobacco. You don't need to smudge to be Indigenous. And that is so reassuring. Like, as my mom would say, no matter where you stand or who you stand beside, you remember who you are. And even though during this time we were not able to stand next to many people for the longest time, it reminded me of who I am. And that those things, I'm not dependent on those things to be who I am. So spiritually, I think I'm rocking it. I'm doing really good. Physically, of course, I've mentioned it a few times. Now we're talking about my steps. So on June 1st, I committed to doing 10 kilometers a day, which I think is around 13,000 steps. As of today is day 61. So by the end of tonight, I will have done 610 kilometers. Right? It doesn't even sound doable, but I did it. 10 kilometers a day. Don't tell me you can't achieve a goal. I don't care what the goal is, but you know how you do it? One step at a time. I'm going to be done 610 kilometers tonight, but as of right now, I'm at 605. I always do the first 5 in the morning and the second 5 late afternoon or evening. I said I wanted to be healthier. Okay. I have to have a talk with myself about the food I'm eating. Gotta admit it. I've been really super busy business-wise lately. I'm happy to report that business has rebounded in a new and wonderful way, and I'm doing awesome in that area. But it means I grab quick food rather than healthy food. So definitely working on that. On the other hand, 10 kilometers a day, I'm probably healthier than I have been in a long time. The last one was happier. And I really thought about that one when I was thinking about taping this show. Am I happier? I don't think I'm happier. I just don't think I'm sadder either. So I was really super happy with my life prior to the pandemic and lockdown. I'm super happy with my life now, not what's going on in the world, but with how I handled it. And that's the part I control. I can't control what other people do and how it affects the numbers, but I can control my part in it. And I'm really, really happy with how I've been able to handle this. And in the beginning, I wasn't sure how I'd be able to handle this. So in retrospect, and 130 some odd days in, yeah, I'm happy. I don't think I'm happier, but I'm definitely happy. I'm maintaining, and that's awesome. And speaking of maintaining, one of the updates, of course, I do is the results of my 10 kilometers a day. So I reported my results after 30 days. I can now say after 60 days, I've pretty much maintained. I've lost like 0.2 of a pound, which doesn't even really count. Measurements are the same. I had lost quite a bit after the first month, and I'm maintaining, but I'm not gaining, which I know a lot of people that can't say that in this period of the pandemic. My energy is still way through the roof. I love that I am now the type of woman that does 10 kilometers a day and honors herself in that way. So am I disappointed that the numbers hadn't changed? I didn't go into this to move the numbers. I didn't go into this to lose weight. I went into it to make sure I didn't keep going on a negative path. The fact that I've maintained means I've achieved that. And I wanted to get healthier, and just from my energy level, I know that I am way healthier than I was at the start of this. Now, just a reminder, next week, this is my last weekend in my condo, and I realized this morning how that really fits into this surviving isolation show. As I had shared in earlier editions, I have chosen to move out of my condo that required a certain financial commitment every month and to move into a more modest surrounding with less of financial commitment, just because, like a lot of people, COVID-19 and the lockdown and what it did to my business scared the flippin' daylights out of me. So my motto, I guess, how I maintain and live my life is celebrate and survive. I celebrate every little amazing thing, like waking up each morning, as you can see in my blog post each morning. But like the animals, our brothers and sisters on four legs and flying and crawling, I prepare to make sure I can survive. The animals gather to survive the winter. The bears go into hibernation. You prepare to survive. I finally got in the habit, and I say this with total honesty here, finally got in the habit of setting some dollars aside each time I get paid. I was never doing that before. I was never taught to do that. And it didn't really make a lot of sense to me until I realized that's survival. I know there's probably going to be a slow period some point in the future. I know there's going to be expenses coming up that I don't know what they're going to be right now. Those kind that catch you off guard. So if I can set aside for that, then that guarantees I survive. Moving into a more modest home guarantees my survival with a lot less stress. Truth be told, the way business is coming in now, I could probably stay in my condo, but I don't have to, and I don't have to make that financial commitment. And my new place has a yard and a deck. And for the first time in my life, I can honestly say, I want a barbecue. I'm not saying I want to do the barbecuing, but I want to see a barbecue on my deck. It might become a really nice flower planter. I don't know, like some people do with their exercise bikes. I'll have to give you an update on that. But that is the show for this week. That is how I'm doing. July 31st, 2 months after my crazy 10-kilometer a day goal. Still working on my March 22nd goals. And I hope I don't abandon them when this is over. Honestly, I kind of thank you for forcing me to check in. Thank you for tuning in, and I have to go look at the stats. I have to ask myself how I'm doing. Sometimes having someone ask you, how you doing, is the best check-in. I know with my very first book, the man I was dating at the time would call me at some point every single day and say, so how much did you get written today? And some days I was excited to say, oh my God, I wrote 10 pages today. And other days I was like, I didn't get around to it, okay? I was really super busy. I tried writing, it doesn't, no. And I can honestly say some days I wanted to shoot him for asking. If he hadn't asked every single day, I don't think that book would have ever been finished. He was the little kick in the butt. Some days I wrote because I knew he was going to call, and I didn't want to say to him that I hadn't done anything. And he knows all of this. This is not a secret to him. Marty, if you're watching this, thank you. I told him at the end there's an entry in the book that is dedicated to him. So, yeah. I thank you for being my check-in. Thank you for being my new Marty. And I hope you have someone that you can check in. Maybe you need to be the check-in for someone else. Get yourself a wellness buddy, and set some goals for the two of you and check in with each other. Go for a walk together, whatever you need to be. Social distancing, stay safe, but stay healthy as well. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Until next week, thank you so much again for being my Marty. I will see you next week. One last thing, I am moving. This is the last week in my condo, so behind me, I was thinking about that. The next time I film this is like the day before I move. I have no idea what the background is going to look like for the next show. That could be entertaining. It's either going to be totally empty or I'm going to be shooting it in my dining room or something. I don't know. I'm just surviving isolation like everyone else, and in this case, it means I'm moving. So until next week, please take care of you. Do that mental health check-in, even just with yourself. And if you can, get yourself a wellness buddy. Set some goals. Do not beat yourself up for what's happened in the past. That can't be changed, but your future absolutely can. Until next week, I love you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.